Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful evening of Geek. Evening? Did I say evening? I did. I said evening. Evening of Geek News Reviews and Opinions for Saturday night, July 9th, 2016. I am, of course, your host, Adam Mickelson. I hope everybody has had a wonderful week. Things got busy for me, but that's all right because I still had to deal with my wife, or not my wife, my baby having some trauma issues with fireworks for most of the week because people apparently had a timer for whenever I was putting my daughter to bed and then lit the big fireworks at that given moment. But I'm not bitter or anything. So yeah, I hope everybody's had a good weekend. I hope that all of our American listeners had a wonderful 4th of July, had plenty of barbecues to have and ribs to eat and hot dogs to eat and fireworks to go off. And, of course, I'm being joined by my usual panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow great human beings, fellow passionate reviewers. And let's go ahead and start things off with Stephen Romney of Romney's Reviews, of From the Shelf, of all of that fun stuff. Romney, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing all right. I mean, the week's been more or less me trying to kind of get back to normal, getting back into advanced screenings, given that even though the films aren't always the greatest when you get to see them in advance, at least you don't pay for them. And as for my 4th of July, I didn't really get to do much because I had to work that day.
Well, I was going to do plenty of things, but and actually I thought I was gonna get away with a 4th of July party where loud noises were not going to bother my daughter, but then the illegal fireworks came out.
Yep.
At least the bottle rockets came out, scared the crap out of my daughter, and we had to get her home. And the very minute we get her home, somebody in our neighborhood is lighting off same said fireworks. So I'm a little bitter this 4th, but it's not that I don't appreciate the morals of the 4th.
Well, yeah, and I'm also a bit bitter. I mean, some for political reasons, but also for I have to get up at 5 o'clock the following morning. Can you please put away the goddamn fireworks, people?
Yes, that doesn't really work. And also we are being joined by the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Shorts. You know, I keep on getting requests that you need to do another episode from the Shadows again. I'm just wondering why you refuse to do it.
I usually like to be well lit, but if people really want me to do another Darkness, I'll do it.
I think you need to do it for Halloween. Just like put a flashlight to your face or something like that. Like we'll be all horror focused, I guess. Yeah. How has your week been? How's your week been, Alex?
It's been a pretty busy, pretty crazy week between work and, of course, you and I had to make time for a midweek showing of Independence Day Resurgence so we could get that up and going, even though it didn't go quite as planned, but we still got the video done and up and all for you to enjoy. And other than that, pretty solid average week.
To which I've gotten 50-50 comments about my imitation of the Independence Day President speech. Some people love it, some people hate it. Think I did Bill Pullman a huge disservice, and some people thought it was the greatest thing ever. So, I mean, we got that out of it at least. And of course, we are here to discuss the geeky events that happened over the week, as well as some events from last week that we didn't actually get to. But that's just because they literally broke like right as we were getting on the podcast. So we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. However, we're coming across another night where we're going to be very entertainment focused, not necessarily tech focused, because tech stories were few and far between. It was pretty much game releases. It was pretty much the same old debates that were happening. And one story that plagued the gaming world, and we'll get to that eventually, kids. We'll get to that in a second. Can you tell my opinion on this whole story, people? Can you tell?
I think
for those of you listening to the of you listening after the fact, Adam is pointing to the lower third he has on his screen, which reads "Tired of BS" on YouTube with, I think it's either 2 or 3 exclamation points. I can't tell because the bandwidth is a little bit funky.
2. So let's go ahead and get to the first story tonight. We're going to start with the tech stuff, and this is going to be on our Nintendo talk, but it's pretty in-depth because, well, Pokemon Go launched this week, and it kind of makes me sad that we don't have Aldo on tonight Aldo's got other
Brenton.
things going on tonight, but I think he's pretty much the only one that
Brenton
has
has
played Pokemon Go on this panel.
Brenton has.
Oh, Brenton
I've
has too?
downloaded it. I've been playing it on and off. It's just, at the time that I started, I mean, keep in mind, people, I just barely got my driver's license, and as soon as I tried starting my phone, I realized this is going to get me killed, so I had to basically throw it in my glove compartment, just thinking, I don't want to die trying to catch an Abra.
Yep, please don't. Please. Guys, I get it. Pokemon Go is awesome, and I've been seeing it all over my Facebook and all over my Twitter. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Put the phone away while you're driving, while you're doing important things. The Pokemon can wait.
And
Okay.
while you're working.
Yeah.
I've already seen people talking about how they've literally run into steel posts because they were focused on their phone and looking for Pokemon. I've had stories of people getting lost on campus and getting late for their summer classes because they were looking for Pokemon. There are things
I'll
more
be
important
honest,
than Pokemon, people. I'm just saying.
I'll be honest. I think we pretty much called it when we said Pokemon Go, aka the end of all civilization.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm actually kind of surprised that we haven't been making jokes about Pokemon being Skynet, because this has officially broken the world. I mean, I've already seen like friends and relatives that are. Granted, I'm glad that they're going out into nature to go look for Pokemon, because that's a great motivator. But then I get to hear these stupid stories of people literally walking into stuff because they're not paying attention of where they're going.
Actually, my favorite story to come out of Pokemon Go, and it was actually a satirical story, not real. It wasn't from The Onion. I don't know the site. I can't remember the site off the top of my head, but it was a satirical story where, obviously, with Pokemon Go so popular, it's having some server troubles. So the story headline read, Pokemon Go, something like, servers are not working efficiently and ISIS claims responsibility.
Yeah, I heard that too, and somebody actually sent me a really funny picture of a artist's rendition of the Pokemon Go servers, which is basically a bunch of plugged-in potatoes. I tried to find it in my Facebook feed, but that would have taken at least an hour, I think, because I get tons of stuff every given day. So it's just the way it goes.
To kind of get back onto the app, since I'm the only one here on the panel who's played it. As for my thoughts on it, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been other ARG apps, and if you have a cheap phone, it's not really going to do you much good because the AR stuff's not going to work, and it'll basically give your phone the uncanny ability to boil water on contact if you run it for too long.
Yeah,
and it's also just.
And here's the thing: I've seen Go in work from a friend who actually showed me how it worked. Because I hate to burst people's bubble. I'm a Pokemon fan, but I wasn't gonna get Pokemon Go. I wasn't that interested, and frankly, my workload is busy enough as is. I don't need distractions at this point, and that would be one ginormous distraction. No offense, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen Pokemon Go in action. It looks like it's okay. It looks like it's running, when the servers are running. But I find it funny that, and we're going to go into as many of the stories as we can, people, but the first one that I guess we have to bring up, which is kind of a buzzkill, thanks, Alex.
Oh, shut up.
Is that, well, we have other discoveries happening while people are looking for Pokemon, including a dead body. Yeah, this actually happened, people. They're out in a Wyoming. I can't remember if it was a national park that it was found in. But out in Wyoming, a person was looking around for viable water Pokemon, and you have to go to like natural water sources to be able to get them. And it just so happened the 19-year-old Shayla Wiggins of Riverton, I'm guessing Riverton, Wyoming, found a body of an unidentified man while searching for Pokemon. That had to be a buzzkill for the Pokemon Go release for poor Shayla Wiggins.
Yeah.
And I don't bring this up lightly, people. I'm not trying to be that douche. That just sucks to me. Like this pretty much like wrecked, at least for Shayla, it wrecked her Pokemon Go launch, because she had to discover this unidentified man. And I don't know if they actually, well, I mean, they had to get testimony and all that stuff. I don't know if we've gotten additional details there, but this is one of those things that I was kind of worried might actually happen now that people are going out into the world and trying to find Pokemon, is we were going to have stories like this. Is we were going to find out, oh yeah, crap happens in the world.
There's a silver lining. According to the sheriff's office, they said the man's death appears to be accidental, possibly the result of drowning. No evidence at this time indicates foul play.
Yet that still sucks.
Not like she discovered.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I mean, I can't imagine finding a dead body, what that'd be like. But at least she didn't have to stumble upon a grisly murder scene or anything like that.
No. From what because I looked up so we're going off of the Polygon article, and I looked up another one, and it doesn't look like foul play or overdoses or anything like that were part of this. They have labeled it an accident, but nonetheless, that's never a fun discovery for anybody. I don't care what age you are. That's pretty much the only negative part we have about Pokemon Go. The one thing that we also are going to talk about is Pokemon Go tonight is pretty much our Nintendo talk, because Pokemon Go has been a good thing for Nintendo this week. So much so that they've seen a sharp rise in their shares, or in their shareholdings, and they've done their fair share of bragging on the internet. They are very happy about it, even though I don't think Nintendo was that involved with the development of the app.
No, since it was primarily developed by Niantic, which is it's a Japanese mobile app development company that they partnered with to basically bring this to the market. But they're still technically a publisher, and so they still get some of the credit.
Yep, they do get the credit, and hey, for people who say we talk too negative about Nintendo, this is a positive thing for them. They're seeing a sharp increase in their shareholdings, so at that point, I'm not saying that they're out of the financial red that they've put themselves in, but this is at least a good sign. This is actually, like, as a publisher, this is a good step into the mobile market for them. Probably, I would dare say, way better than Mitomo was. So at that point, they now have that holding, and that's great. I'm trying to bring up the actual story here, and it's not working. Somebody take over for me.
To the
internet.
As you said, according to Reuters, shares of Nintendo jumped 10% overnight, reaching their highest level in more than 2 months. Nintendo has a market value of $23 billion.
Mm-hmm. And despite the fact that they didn't have much to do with it, it's mainly from
Niantic.
The company. It's Niantic.
And
Niantic.
the Pokemon company.
I thought it was Niantic. So yeah, and it did launch in Australia and New Zealand. I think it's pretty much... No, it's not out everywhere yet, is it? It's still got like a month or two before it hits Europe. And who else was the other market that isn't?
That's what it's looking like.
Yeah. So at that point, I mean, it looks like a fun app. I've never said otherwise, although I'm still a little unclear as to what that watch was supposed to do. But from what I'm hearing from friends is that it's pretty pointless, at least as far as the app is concerned. So why make the watch if it's pointless?
To basically make a $35 accessory that the diehard fans will buy.
Of course, because diehard fans are, of course, early adopters, aren't they?
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm going to open it up to you guys. Alex, your thoughts on Pokemon Go? Obviously, you don't have it.
No, because I don't have a smartphone. I have a dumb phone, unfortunately, as is life.
It's almost like money is the thing for you.
Yeah. It's almost like I spend too much money on anime.
He said it, people, not me.
But I'm glad to see Pokemon Go is doing so well. I mean, I had heard some unfortunate things before it did launch. I heard it didn't work well and it kind of overheated phones, but just besides the server problems, it sounds like it's doing well enough that with some more fine-tuning as time goes on, it'll probably be a really great app. And probably in the eventual days that I finally can upgrade my phone, then I'll probably get this app. It probably will be a little bit fun. I've been reading Brenton's Twitter. He's having a field day. Field day.
So, Romney, do you have any additional thoughts that you want to add to this before I add in a really weird question?
Well, there is one speculation that I got into, because my older brother, he's really into altered reality games. He played this one on his phone called Ingress, that kind of functions similarly to Pokemon Go, except you're not really capturing Pokemon. You're trying to seize portals to some other dimension for one faction or another. And this is the problem with ARGs is that unless you're an early adopter, if you try to join late in the game, you could very well end up with a point of, oh, all the gyms in my area have already been taken over, so there's not much point in trying to reclaim them or fight for them, or, oh, all these Pokemon have been snatched up, or, oh, all these photo stops up. And so it's definitely one of those things where it's doing well, but there may not be a lot of potential for people joining the game later on, unless Nintendo decides to be a bit drastic with how they basically decide to maintain things going forward, whether it's through various events through the app and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I actually have kind of a preservation with, is that I'm too busy. Like Pokemon Go, I'm a Pokemon fan, but I'm not necessarily all that invested in it, and I don't want to pick it up now. Maybe I'd pick it up later, and that's actually one of my worries, is that I'd be picking it up, let's just say like a year later, and I'd be behind the learning curve from everybody else. But I mean, that's kind of my viewpoint on it. I'm already getting messages just like, "What, do you hate Pokemon or something?" No, I don't hate Pokemon. It's just this is not what I care about. I like Pokemon as a legit JRPG, but Pokemon Go just isn't a thing for me. I don't want to go out into the world to go explore for Pokemon. That's not what I want to go do. If you gave me an app that let me find a grove where I could find the Master Sword, maybe. But
give it time. I mean, if it does well enough, who knows? Nintendo might do something like that. I know they're already planning on something for Fire Emblems, a phone app for Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing, so who knows? If they decide to go further with the ARG sort of thing, you never know.
Yeah, and don't take my words as bad. I don't think this is a bad idea. In fact, I think I've praised it throughout this whole thing, haven't I? I don't think I've said negative things about Pokemon. So at that point, just because I'm not the guy picking it up, that's nothing against it. I think it's a great idea, and I like the fact that Pokemon fans everywhere that I follow are absolutely adoring it. That's great. I mean, I've literally watched tons of things coming in from my nieces on all the Pokemon they caught via Facebook, and that's great because they love it. So much so that they got their dad, who is not a Pokemon fan, to get the app and actually mess around with it. So there you go. But I'm going to go ahead and open up to a weird question, and that is, what is the weirdest or dumbest story or thing you've heard via social media from your friends that concerns Pokemon Go? Mine is already there. I've literally heard about people getting lost on campus and getting late for class, or literally walking into steel posts. Thankfully, they never broke their phone.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything where I've just heard more tragic stuff. I mean, I've seen a macro image circulating of a sign a workplace had to post saying, it's like, we pay you to work, not to pursue fictional 3D polygonal creatures.
I've seen that.
Yeah. And then I've just been hearing stories about how people nearly crashed their cars trying to catch Abras. And that's
don't use it while you're driving. If you're in the passenger seat, fine. Maybe give it over to your friend and say, "Can you please catch an Abra for me? I'll owe you a solid." But don't do that while you're driving, people. Don't. I already have enough to worry about with neighbor kids or kids in general texting while driving. I just don't want. I don't want that on my conscience.
Yeah, but there's also, I mean, my sister's also been using it, and she's been having the problem where, like, on some regards, like, oh yeah, she meets up with friends while walking, but literally, before I even downloaded the app, she literally warned me saying, please don't walk into traffic like I did.
Jeez.
Yeah, like I said, don't walk into traffic, people. The Pokemon aren't worth it.
Use a little common sense, people.
Yeah, and I think we pretty much said it. It is the end of civilization. It's basically going to get all the Pokemon fans to off themselves trying to find Pokemon.
This is not making a good case. Like, eventually my wife is going to get a smartphone, and one of the things she's going to want to get is Pokemon Go. This is not making a good case for it. I might have to be the husband and have an intervention.
Yeah.
Alex, what is the weirdest thing you've heard via social media that has happened since Pokemon Go has come out?
I haven't heard any weird, like Rodney, I really haven't heard weird stories. I've seen a lot of memes posted, and I've seen and of course there's this whole story of the dead body and some of the more satirical news stories to come out. From the same website where I found the ISIS story, one more slightly grimmer satirical story was the kid who gets stabbed from walking into the bad neighborhood, and it does literally say the bad neighborhood. Again, this is not quite the Onion. This is probably more equivalent to like National Enquirer or something, just because of the way they structure their stories. But again, thankfully that one's fake. It's satire. So, but yeah, I still love the whole sign that we pay you to work. Please do not chase Pokemon.
So a friend of mine has just barely retweeted something to me. So I guess there's a meme going around going, gets Pokemon Go, breaks into Area 51. Sir, this is government property. Where the F is Mewtwo?
Like the one I saw, it's like, why should we hire you for this job? There's a Blastoise here. Where is he?
So with that, I think we've pretty much wrapped up Pokemon Go tonight, unless you guys want to have any final thoughts.
I think we said it all.
All right, so unfortunately that means we get to go from positive to extremely negative.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry, I just got to make this one last joke where I guess it just means that you're going to Pokemon G over there.
No, you got to do it right. Alex, we're meeting G.
Over there.
I don't even know if we were pointing in the same direction.
I don't know either. Pointing this way.
So we were opposite. There you go. So let's go ahead and get into the next story here, and this is the one that YouTubers have been talking about all damn week. And there's not much we can really add to the story. In fact, more channels have done plenty of research compared to us. We're basically picking up the stuff that they picked up, and that is all of regarding CSGO Lotto. So yeah. Give me it once. Do I have a pillow to grab? No, I don't have a pillow to grab. Damn it, because I probably need a pillow tonight. So I'm gonna sum up the CSGO Lotto situation because there's a lot into it. This is basically, and appropriately, because H3 is involved in this one too. It's the same as his little lawsuit, where there's tons of details and we're going to miss it, but lots has happened over the previous week. So CSGO Lotto is a site where I guess you can basically trade, or you can bet currency within the game. So stuff you can buy via microtransactions like uniforms, gun skins, knife skins, stuff like that, scope skins, all that kind of stuff. You can buy those, and then you can bet them on CSGO Lotto and be able to get a pretty hefty pot if you play it right. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that two of the people that have advertised it the most were one, can I actually get their legit names here, Trevor Martin and Thomas Castle? I think that's how you say his name. So, a.k.a. T. Martin and the Syndicate, who have been advertising CSGO Lotto and have been doing videos, and they were talking about potential sponsorships and things like that. And then we find out that this week, it just so happens to be that I think at the very least, Martin is an owner, and Castle is a vice president of CSGO Lotto.
Yep.
To which we got a quote apology video from Martin, where he basically said, yes, I've done this and I haven't hidden it and blah 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 blah. And then we had tons of YouTubers literally dig out his videos and his testimony, and where he says, or he doesn't say, I am the owner, I'm looking at the possibility of a sponsorship with CSGO Lotto. Basically, for the video he did, he got like 10 different videos sent out via YouTube where we caught his hands red, roughly. Mm-hmm. Syndicate, not so much. Syndicate has actually played it fairly close to, or played it fairly safe, but Martin is the one that's really getting a lot of the heated, or a lot of the fire for this, especially since he adheres to the fact that he has not done anything wrong, and he has made it painfully clear that he was the owner and that nothing was done in the wrong here. But now we have channels like H3H3 and numerous others that are pointing out that no, he actually probably even had some FTC violations when it came to this thing.
Yep.
So Whereas Castle has
Not
basically said, I thought I made this clear. I even talked to a YouTube lawyer, and
not even a YouTube lawyer. You just literally emailed someone at YouTube asking it. Not even someone who was a lawyer. It's like, oh, I asked someone at YouTube and they said it was okay.
yeah, so he's played it fairly safe. I know that a lot of the hatred is more towards Martin at this point, not necessarily Castle, although Castle is getting that hatred. So at that point, we've had numerous people come out. We've had Jim Sterling. We've had Total Biscuit. I want to say, have the Big Four come out? No, I don't think I've seen a video from PewDiePie or Markiplier at the very least on this one. But we've already seen, a lot of the other gaming YouTube channels come out with at least some kind of an opinion. YouTube Drama has done stuff on it. Phil DeFranco keeps on coming up on my channel thread with his CSGO Lotto stories. In fact, a listener brought the Total Biscuit video to our attention, and I immediately linked it, and I watched it, and I kind of agree with TB at this point. It's a big mess, and frankly, apologize all you want, Martin. I don't buy it, because frankly, I don't think you've been that transparent on the matter when people can dig out videos you've done and can use your testimony against you. This is something that'll kill you in court.
Yep. And it's not even just the whole, oh, he's hiding the fact that he owned the site. What's really also hurting him, which is part of the impetus of the main lawsuit that brought all of this to light, is that he's advertising the site to minors, ergo basically advertising gambling to minors. Yeah, it's using the loophole, but that's the other big thing. That's the reason that and it's an anonymous parent. The names of the parent and the child in question have not been released. And it's a lawsuit by an anonymous parent on behalf of their child against these two creators for those FTC violations and for marketing gambling to minors. They even tried to get Valve involved in the lawsuit because they were they're accusing Valve of deliberately allowing this market to exist. Whether or not they're culpable, that would remain to be seen. But yeah, it's a mess to say the least.
So I don't know this aspect of it, the Valve aspect. Is it advertised on Valve or on Steam?
It isn't, but it isn't in the sense. But Steam has the marketplace where a lot of these high-value, rare skins can be bought, sold, and traded, and often for real-world money. It's a lot like the pachinko machines in Japan, where you win the pachinko machines. You get the prizes, and then you go to a building next door where you can exchange your prizes for money. It's literally a way to sidestep the laws in regards to online gambling. And the people bringing the lawsuit to these creators are also bringing it to Valve on the grounds that Valve is basically allowing for this to happen on their site and is more or less abetting it.
Yeah, and the other thing too that also kind of bothers me on this is, so the skins are being bought via the microtransaction system on on Counter-Strike Global Offensive, right? Is that how
yes,
that's working?
Pretty much for the.
Okay, so
it is and it isn't. Or it's where they're bought initially through the microtransactions, but just through they're obtained through the microtransactions first, and then they're sold on the Steam marketplace.
So at that point, if kids are actually doing this, I'm pretty sure they're not doing it on their card. So at that point, you've got parents' cards that are now invested in this mess.
Yeah, and some of these skins go to the thousands and thousands of dollars, which is why this is becoming such a big deal.
And the other part that's actually going against them is that, well, they basically are putting up videos where they are playing the game, and well, you're the owner, which means you can technically rig this for yourself. I mean, you could literally walk away with a good amount of the skins. And I know Martin has said, no, we haven't done that, but, well, given all of your other testimony, it's very fishy that's going to be the case, that you aren't going to try and rig things eventually. And yeah, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, kids are actually doing a lot of betting on CSGO Lotto. So at that point, this is just a messed up story all around. I tend to agree with TB. I think this is one of those things that there are legit FTC violations going on at this given moment, and I'm wondering whether or not they need to get involved with the whole matter. Which I'm not usually the guy that wants to bring that up, but this whole thing is just fishy to me. All the homework that I've done, Martin and Castle are both very shady characters as far as I am concerned. And I also love the fact that Castle, I think it was on Thursday, his apology was deleted from his channel or removed from it, and then I guess he made the statement on Twitter, or one of his supporters did, that he apparently got hacked, quote, hacked, and they removed the apology. So I'm just like, really? You got hacked for one video? Which is okay, because we had 4 channels actually put the apology video up again.
Yep. That's the thing about the internet. I mean, try as you might to suppress it, the internet does not forget. That's why we still have information about the Drivergate scandal from way back in the early 2000s, and it's pretty much the same thing here. So,
well, sunlight is the best disinfectant for stuff like this, especially for and I'm going to use this term the way I would use it, for scumbags like Martin and Castle. Because I can't think of another term to use other than that. I know that sounds biased to a lot of people. I don't know if we have listeners that are siding with Martin and Castle, but this is my particular viewpoint on it, is that these guys are douches, and they're making us look like douches, which I don't appreciate in the slightest. So let's go ahead and open it up to the panel. Romney, you've already kind of given a little bit of thoughts. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Honestly, after looking into it, it's pretty clear that something needs to happen where these people need to have their day in court. I mean, personally, I would want the Federal Trade Commission to get involved because they're violating a lot of things outlined by the Federal Trade Commission. Then there's the whole marketing gambling to minors that they need to answer for. Simply put, the whole, basically, they shouldn't be allowed to weasel their way out of it. A precedent needs to be set in our courts in regards to crap like this. Because there aren't any laws in the books, but if we have a precedent set in our courts, that'll basically pave the way for legislation to be made if and when we actually get legislators and representatives who know how the internet actually works into office. And so I don't mean to wish ill will on these two, but honestly, I hope the FTC throws the boot at them.
Well, frankly, I mean, I don't have... Here's the way that I'm seeing it. You get your day in court, and I have no problem with you getting your day in court. But if you're proven guilty, well, I'm going to call you a scumbag. That's just the way that it's going to work. Especially, if a jury of your peers actually ruled you were in the wrong on this matter. So
yeah, that would depend whether or not it actually is a trial that would be brought before a jury, given that what we're getting is an initial lawsuit, which would be brought before a judge. If they're actually being indicted by the federal, it could be a case brought before a jury, but even then, this is where things get a little bit tricky, because when dealing with the Federal Trade Commission, it's not as clear-cut as, say, a murder trial or a burglary trial, so on and so forth. You're basically having to deal with a lot more complicated stuff, which makes it hard to find jurors for, which sometimes some cases are usually brought before a judge rather than try and bring in jurors who can actually make those judgment calls. And especially with all the media attention, that would make finding jurors that much harder, because with how the media can blow up cases, it can make it hard to find an unbiased jury. And so, with this whole thing, one thing that also bothers me is with the apology, how he was trying to more or less pander to people with like, oh, here's my dog here. And it reminds me of South Park when they satirized the whole British Petroleum apology, where you just have the guy going, we're sorry. And then you see him like petting the nails like, we're sorry.
Well, and the problem with the video, too, is that he doesn't look repentant in the whole thing. Like, I watched not the actual video, but the one of the reproduction ones that came up after his video went down. I watched that video, and there's at no point where I thought he was being repentant, where he was actually sorry about the matter. I think he's sorry that he got caught.
Yeah.
But that's the bottom line of it. He comes off basically saying, I didn't do anything wrong, and I can prove where I didn't do anything wrong, and I know that I'm the owner, and I know that I said all this stuff, but I didn't do anything wrong. But you did. And the fact that you're saying I didn't do anything wrong tells me you know you did something wrong.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a mess, and I mean...
Alex, do you have anything to add on this whole situation?
Oh, unfortunately, not really. It's not that I don't agree with your opinions at all, I'm not siding with them. What they did is clearly big problematic. The problem is it's a little, well, over my head. It's something I haven't had, unfortunately, much time to really dive deeper and deeper into this week, because it's been kind of a crazy week for me. So I'm going to need to really, I think, do a little more homework for myself on this issue, get a find some videos that are that at least are a little more expertise. I've seen some of the opinions out of it. Like I posted one from Boogie298, I think that's his name, and I've heard a lot of the different opinions. Most of them are pretty much saying, yeah, these guys are scumbags, and yes, they are, and they are pretty much unapologetic. They're only sorry they got caught. You're absolutely right. So now when it comes to the whole litigation issue and what comes next, that's something I'm going to need a little more.
Yeah, you and me need to have a talk about you putting up stuff from Boogie. I nothing against the guy. I'm sure he's a good guy. I'm so sick and tired of hearing his perspective on things. Because usually it ends up with him being angry, and then me worrying about whether or not he's going to have a heart attack on camera. Nothing against the guy, but I'm not a fan of Boogie. But
he always seems pretty calm unless he's doing his Francis character.
Well, whatever you want to call it, I all the videos that I have seen have been him like having a conniption.
I think I think those are like his characters, like his Francis character or something, because he's kind of like, I guess he's kind of like the angry video game nerd, where he's kind of got a character that he plays, but there's also videos where he's candid and just himself.
Yeah, and I know he's done stuff with like Angry Joe and a couple of other YouTubers, and I did see his video. I've seen plenty of others aside from that. I would also say, like, check out the Jimquisition that was done on CSGO Lotto.
I did see Jimquisition's video, yeah.
For no other reason than I love how it opened. Yeah, that's the reason to watch it, is the Pogs for Boglins. That was absolutely awesome. A great joke. I'm not the biggest fan of Jim Sterling either, but I gotta hand props to him there. That was a good joke. So, I've already gone into my opinion on the matter. This is a mess overall. This is a horrible, horrible mess, and frankly, one that makes me want to smack both Castle and Martin upside the head, because while they're looking like idiots, they're making YouTubers look like idiots. Especially gaming YouTubers and critic YouTubers. I would actually dare say there's a certain branch of YouTube that kind of gets away from this, like the cooking and the do-it-yourself channels. But the gaming channels are especially affected by this whole thing. The other example is the lawsuit going on with H3H3 and that other guy. I can't remember the name.
Matt Senzade.
Thank you. And so at that point, it's just like, congratulations, you're making us look like idiots.
I'm not quite seeing your angle here, why you think that they are kind of dragging us through the mud when they do this kind of stuff. Do you want to elaborate a little more?
Because eventually, because Romney kind of touched on this, if this goes to court, there's a good chance it's going to get some level of media coverage, which means that the big networks are going to cover it at some point or another, because a 24-hour news cycle deems that they should. And at that point, it's yet again gaming YouTubers and gamers in general being put in the crosshairs for something that two idiots did, not necessarily because they did it. It's
yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that Jimmy Kimmel had every right to come out and say, look, I wasn't making fun of you guys, but you lashed out at me anyway. And he was kind of in the right for that, because half the crap that he got was just utter vitriol. Enough so that he had to bring on Markiplier so that he could redeem himself on camera. And that's the issue that I have, is that it doesn't matter that I'm a gaming YouTuber, I do game reviews, I do Let's Plays on my channel. It doesn't matter that I'm not involved in CSGO Lotto and I couldn't give a crap about CSGO Lotto. A person down the street who looks at my channel and sends a message to me could easily say, well, I don't know if I should trust you, or if my kids should watch your channel because of this whole CSGO Lotto thing. I'm not even involved in it, but as far as they're concerned, I am. And that's the issue that I have with it, is that, yes, for their actions, we look like a-holes. And I'm sick and tired of that happening.
And honestly, to kind of bring it down a little bit, this is just more or less part of the growing pains of YouTube as a medium, of online video as a medium, is that we're getting to that point where reality is starting to hit a lot of these creators, and hitting hard, as it rightfully should, because people still think that just because it's on the internet, it's not real, which is far from the truth. It is real life, and now we're getting to the growing pains where people are starting to learn that in a very, very hard way, which is why you've got Martin being like thinking, "Oh, I did nothing wrong." It's like, yeah, you did, asshole, and
Yeah,
now you gotta pay the piper.
I'll tell you the other thing that actually irritates me from the TB video, and I confirmed it throughout the week. This guy's got a good amount of subscribers. He's got at least, what was it, 2, 3? Yeah, let me look him up really quick. Yeah, 3 million. 3 million subscribers. Martin alone has got 3 million subscribers. I'm more ethical than him. That's bullcrap.
Yep.
So yeah,
That's the sad
I'm a
part
little resentful when it comes to that, where I'm doing everything by the book and by the letter, and well, a-holes like this come in and abuse the system and do potential FTC violations and mess around with kids and family lives. And yeah, he's got like Markiplier numbers, not Markiplier numbers, but close enough. You know, that's irritating as far as I'm concerned. I know that's my own personal bias on the matter.
And again, it is just fine. It's just we're entering that awkward part of the dawn of internet video, where now it's a case of, oh, now we actually have to start approaching these things like an actual industry, and not just. It's no longer just a novelty,
Yep.
And now we have people who are going into YouTube, going into internet video, have to start making those assessments like they would any other business venture. You can't just say, oh, it's just a fun little hobby that's not real and has no repercussions on my life. No, nope, not anymore. Not anymore. Those days are gone. Long gone.
You got to play it by the book, and if you don't, then, well, you're gonna make people around you who are working just as hard as you look like idiots. But on top of that, you're gonna hurt everybody's chances as a whole, because it's gonna be very hard for any of us to be. This is the same thing that I saw in the '90s. One idiot does one thing wrong, and the rest of the gaming community gets blamed for it. So that's what you're doing here.
I mean, that crap's been going on since the 70s, where you have the panicky parents groups with Dungeons and Dragons, like, oh, it's Satan's game and all that, even though none of them actually did any research. And don't even get me started on the bullshit that chick guy tried starting.
Or, I've said it on the podcast where, my brother got a little mad at me for bringing it up because it's like bad memories that he didn't want to relive. But he was like the neighborhood Satanist, because he ran a D&D group. He wasn't the DM, but he was like, he offered up our house to do the campaigns and things like that. And so at that point, he got labeled the neighborhood Satanist because he was running a D&D group. So yeah, I mean, crap like this happens overall. It doesn't necessarily need to be just gaming. Alex, you can attest to this. Anime fans get this to some extent too. I mean, for crying out loud, Japan, anime fans are ridiculed outright. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be just this medium. It's just one of those things that the actions of one person affect us all. And frankly, unfortunately, a lot of the events this week have been this. And that's why I'm saying I'm tired of my lower third shouldn't read tired of BS on YouTube. It's just tired of BS, period. Because this has been happening all week. In many, many, many fields. It doesn't need to necessarily be gaming. It's politics, it's TV, entertainment, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, politics, entertainment, and just real life in general.
Yeah.
It's a sticky wicket, to say the least.
So, final thoughts before we move on into the entertainment portion of the evening, because I think that'll improve our Prozac. But oh wait, I forgot to confess, we don't have a Prozac budget anymore. I spend it all on Doom. I should have mentioned that to you guys, but
Yeah, well, it was very much broken at the start of the year, so we're more or less just having to deal with the aftermath of it being without it. So
yeah,
that's just life.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move into the first entertainment story of the evening, and this broke last weekend. And Alex caught it, but unfortunately the agenda was written. And so we're going to talk about it now, which is, according to Pixar, after Incredibles 2, there will be no more sequels in development as of July 2nd. I'm just going to go ahead and say my opinion. I don't believe it for a second because it's not like, I'm not saying that Pixar has a reputation of going back on their word, but well, they like making them sequels. And so
Not
at that point,
necessarily, actually. Pixar actually has the biggest track record of fighting tooth and nail against sequels, because it's not really Pixar that wants to do it, it's Disney more or less forcing them to do it, because a lot of people forget that there was almost their own in-house computer animation thing called Mode 7 Studios, that Disney said, oh, you don't want to make this sequel to Toy Story? Well, we'll just make our own studio and basically make it without your say-so. They were going to do it with Toy Story, they were going to do it with The Incredibles, so on and so forth, and so it's not so much Pixar liking to make the sequels, it's Disney more or less putting the pressure on Pixar, especially now that Pixar is in-house.
and I'm worried about that too, and that's part of why I'm skeptical about this whole thing, is that Disney would strong arm their way in, or an opportunity may come their way where they could make a potential sequel for another franchise. I mean, the idea that came to my mind is, Brad Bird loves working on Incredibles 2, that maybe he agrees to do an Incredibles 3, or even decides to do a Ratatouille 2. That could happen too, and that's why I'm a little skeptical about this announcement of there will be no sequels after Incredibles. And the other thing too is that there will be sequels eventually, because you'll do a bunch of new properties, they'll be popular, and then Disney will strong arm you into making sequels for them.
Or hand it off to their Disney Toon branch, which is what we had with Planes, because Planes was the big car spinoff that they handed off to the TV division, and then it's like, oh, well, this did well enough, we'll make another one with the same TV division and then rush it into theaters.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too, and I love the fact that they tried to call that a Cars spinoff. It was Cars 3 as far as I was concerned.
Wasn't Cars 2 just Disney, not Pixar as well?
No, I think it was Pixar.
No, Pixar worked on that.
Okay.
Because Lasseter came out and made some statements about it. At least that's how I know about it. And then Planes came out, or was it Planes Rescue or whatever?
Fire Rescue, yeah.
Yeah,
So
Rescue,
that's pretty much Cars 3 as far as I'm concerned. And I've already heard talk of Disney wanting to do a Toy Story 4, and it's just nuts. I've even heard of potential sequels for Brave and WALL-E that they want to do. So let's just go ahead and open this up to the panel. My opinion is very clear. I think that they're going to do sequels. I don't think they should in some cases. Some of those movies stand on their own fairly well. WALL-E, I would say, stands fairly well on its own, and adding a sequel to it, I think, would hurt it. I would also say that Toy Story has been hurt by all of the sequels to some extent, but I'm biased on that one. I like the first one. I don't like the second or third. I also think Monsters, Inc. was kind of hurt with the sequel that came out, Monsters University.
Yeah, now that one, that was one I refused to see on principle, mainly just because when I want a sequel, I want to see the story move forward. I don't care about. I'm not a big fan of prequels unless prequels actually add something. But Monsters University is like, oh, well, we already know where this is going to lead, so what's the point?
And we just barely had Dory come out, Finding Dory. So at that point, you have even that. Yeah. It's like, that's why I'm saying I'm skeptical about that. I think they'll find a way to be able to do more sequels, but I do want to see Pixar do more unique properties, because that's what Pixar is known for. Good dinosaur aside. Alex, your opinion on no sequels after Incredibles 2?
Well, pretty much what you've said already is I don't necessarily believe there'll never ever be no sequels. Frankly, it probably more or less does mean either no sequels immediately following Incredibles 2, we'll have like a string of new original films for a while, and then maybe down the road there will be one when they feel like it or when Disney decides they want to do it. But I still think, if Pixar themselves don't make a sequel, I feel like Disney will take over and do it, and just do it. That's pretty much it. I mean, Pixar's made sequels, obviously, and I don't believe they'll ever completely abandon them.
No. If there's potential and Pixar sees the potential in it, they'll do it. Or Disney will strong arm them into doing it. Romney, any other additional thoughts you want to add on this?
Honestly, I understand people being wary, and I am a little bit wary too of like how long will it last before they either cave or Disney forces them. But at the same time, I hope that Pixar at least sticks to their guns for at least a little while, where they say, okay, we're not going to do like sequels for at least like say a good time would be like 6 years, where they would go 6 years at least without trying to do a straight up sequel to any of their franchises. And I hope they stick to their guns. And given that Lasseter is head of animation for both Pixar and Disney, that could be something that he could actually help to kind of fight against and prevent for a while. And even then, it may even just be, okay, well, maybe it'll just be, oh, we won't make sequels in-house. We'll just hand it off to the Disney Toon branch if Disney so desperately wants a sequel, or they'll just limit it to a series of shorts like they did for Toy Story and for Inside Out.
Yeah. So at that point, I think that we'll do it, but I mean, I agree with them. They should just do a couple of individualized properties and kind of redefine themselves. I mean, believe it or not, people don't want to admit this, but The Good Dinosaur hit Pixar hard.
It did.
Because it was their first failure. I mean, this was the company that could do no wrong. In fact, we said that on a couple of times on the podcast. We're just like, this company can do wrong to us, and then they had their first ever flop. And so Good Dinosaur has actually kind of hurt their reputation. Now they need to make up for it. I agree with the decision. They should do this. But Disney could easily come in and destroy that. Or another opportunity could come in and we'll get another sequel out of it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, even before The Good Dinosaur, Pixar didn't always bat 1,000. There are some of their Pixar films that have been weaker than others. I mean, I've gone on record talking about my disdain for Brave and my anger that it got the Best Animation Oscar when it clearly did not deserve it, but then again, that's nepotism for you. And so they don't always bat 1,000, but Good Dinosaur was when it became very clear, okay, Pixar is not infallible, even the gods must tumble.
Yeah, and I've also said it too, because I had issues with Brave, because basically, and I'll say it again, because as far as I'm concerned, the plot of Brave is its brother bear with girls. That's what it is. The other one that I'd point out is Bug's Life. I'm not a fan of that one. And I've also said I'm not a fan of the Toy Story sequels. I don't like them. I haven't seen 3. I have no intention of seeing 3. Because Toy Story is what it is to me, and there's no way of being able to change that. I'm also not the biggest fan of Wall-E, actually, believe it or not. I have some issues between
some of the. Yeah, and that's one thing that a lot of people kind of need to get away from, is that Pixar is not perfect. Sometimes their ideas work out really well, sometimes not. Keep in mind, they're constantly cultivating new talent. A lot of those shorts you see ahead of these films, that's their way of testing directors that they're considering handing features to. I mean, sadly, with The Good Dinosaur, the short that played before The Good Dinosaur was better than the entire movie, and so at least I hope that the director of Sanjay's Super Team gets a bigger project later on, because at least Sanjay's Super Team was actually decent.
Yep. So, final thoughts before we move on into the next story, because, I mean, we'll follow this, obviously. We're interested, but I really do think that Pixar will hold to their word until something happens. And then they can't.
Placing all bets, taking all bets. Place your bets now. How long will it be before they decide to do another sequel? My bet is 6 years.
Yeah, something like that. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story, which got suggested to me by a couple of listeners. Oh, people are going to be so happy we're talking about this. So there is rumors going around that Fox and Marvel are in talks about a potential. Now, the article that we have in particular only aims at one of these, but I have seen where they're in talks for both a Marvel Studios headed Fantastic Four and X-Men movie. Now, the article that we have just says X-Men, which in turn has sparked the rumor mill of flowing, because if they do it, will Hugh Jackman be involved? Does that mean that we can officially have Wolverine in an Avengers movie? Will we get Ian McKellen or Patrick Stewart involved with it? Probably not. But yeah, the rumor mill has already sparked up that they are in talks because of the hype regarding Spider-Man Homecoming so far. And I'd like to point out for the record, Homecoming hasn't even received a trailer yet, people. It hasn't received any of this stuff. All we've heard is speculation. Apparently there's a rumor going around that Miles Morales is going to show up in the movie. They still haven't confirmed whether or not the villain is officially Vulture. and whether or not Michael Keaton will play him. So at this point, to say that Fox is already doing this because, well, they're bleeding and they want to have a successful Marvel Studios movie, I don't know if I necessarily buy it because Sony hasn't had, quote, success yet from the Spider-Man movie coming out. I'm not saying that it isn't possible, but I think we're jumping the gun here a little bit, personally. I'm all for rumors and everything like that. And guys, I would love a Marvel Studios X-Men movie or Marvel Studios Fantastic Four, if for no other reason than we can finally say the word mutant in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because mutants are pretty much everywhere. And if this happens, then great, but right now it's rumored that they're in talks. So I'm going to open it up to the panel. What are your thoughts on Sony or Fox approaching Marvel Studios for movies?
I highly doubt that that's going to really happen, because the key thing to remember is that Fox and Marvel have been at each other's throats in regards to their movie franchises for a good number of years, because while with Sony, Marvel still had merchandising rights over Spider-Man as a character, and so they were still making a good deal of money even when they didn't have rights to the movies. With the X-Men and Fantastic Four, they have to split that merchandising money with Fox. That's just part of the contracts that they're still fighting tooth and nail to more or less hold on to, and that's pretty much the big sticking point, is that something drastic would have to change in the contract agreement between Fox and Marvel for any of this to take place, not to mention that there'd have to be a good number of producers that would suddenly have to leave Fox, and a good number of directors like Bryan Singer who would have to, like, more or less officially bow out from the franchise for any of this to happen, because you've got a lot of people who work on these X-Men movies that don't like playing nice with Marvel.
No, they don't. And some of it is well-founded and some of it isn't, but I can already tell you that there would be... I mean, there's already some level of backlash happening with the Sony deal. I've actually seen stories that have said that Sony... The only reason that they accepted the deal was because of the hack, because they were perceived as weak, and they may have not seen it that way. They actually like the idea, but it doesn't matter. That's how they're forever going to be portrayed in this whole thing. So if Spider-Man: Homecoming bombs, then, well, Sony's just going to look all the weaker.
Yeah, and I mean, especially when you consider the fact that there was a time where they were literally, that Fox and Marvel were directly competing each other with both Avengers 2 and X-Men Days of Future Past, and how there was even that so-called alliance between Fox and Sony to advertise each other's films to try to outdo Marvel. I mean, at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you get a post-credit trailer for X-Men Days of Future Past. That's how testy the relationship is. So unless something that drastic happens over at Fox that forces them to more or less give up the rights that they fought so long to more or less hold on to for all these years, yeah. I don't see this as any more than just a rumor. I mean, either Marvel would, and by extension Disney, would have to take up something really big on Fox to basically get them to loosen their grip on Fantastic Four and X-Men, or it's just something drastic would have to happen to change the dynamic. And given that Marvel's in the position of power, I don't see that happening anytime soon, unless Fox completely and royally screws up to the point that it is that they're beyond redemption.
Yeah, I mean, if we were in the days of X-Men Origins Wolverine, then maybe they would have been there. But, and here's the other problem that I have with this whole discussion. If it was just Fantastic Four, I would understand. Fantastic Four has not had good movies come out, and so at that point, it's not been a financial success for them. And I'm not saying X-Men has been, but they've done fairly well, at least to my knowledge. I mean, even X-Men: The Last Stand did well, just from people wanting to see it, and so their ticket sales were up there. Even X-Men Origins Wolverine had at least put the budget in the black. I think it actually did get a profit. The Wolverine did as well. So at that point, the part that I don't believe on this is that I don't believe an X-Men movie is going to be on the table, because X-Men is doing fairly well as far as anybody is concerned. I might be wrong about that. I don't know the exact finances, but
I mean, especially after Deadpool and how well that did for Fox,
yeah.
There's no way they're going to be giving up something like that over to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because out of all the films, the ones that did the best were Deadpool and X-Men First Class.
Well,
And
not only
especially
that, we have a Deadpool sequel announced. We have Wolverine 3 happening. In fact, I think an announcement came out today. Deadpool 2 will be happening before Wolverine 3. There's still the potential X-Force movie that's in talks. And there's also the Gambit movie, which we actually wrote off as being in development hell. Apparently it's not, because now they're actually saying that they're setting up filming for 2017. So
yeah, and there's also the New Mutants movie that's been in development for a while that the director that they're currently getting, they're trying to basically work out the scheduling because Josh Boone, the director for the upcoming New Mutants project, is currently working on The Stand as part of the new Stephen King cinematic universe that ties into the Dark Tower films. And so it's very much that they've got a lot that they have in the burner. So like I mentioned, unless someone either hacks Fox or something causes Fox's stock to plummet so drastically to the point where making another X-Men movie would basically financially ruin them, it's just not going to happen. Not for a long time. Not unless Marvel and Disney decide to engage in a straight up knockdown, drag out fight to get the contract dissolved.
Yeah, and the other one again, I did my homework on this one, and I actually read into the comment threads for a lot of people. And one of the things that's being used to substantiate the X-Men movie that actually kind of irritates me is people will remember when the list got announced from Marvel that an Inhumans movie was being set up. And even Season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was doing an Inhuman angle. And so at that point, that was pretty much setting up for that movie. And so a lot of people are actually saying via the rumor mill that this is why the X-Men movie is happening, because they took Inhumans off the table, which was their supposed answer for that. And I don't know if I necessarily buy that, because I think the reason that got pulled off the table was maybe because the Inhumans angle, to my knowledge, didn't do very well in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and there's not a whole lot of known, or there's not a whole lot of knowledge towards the Inhumans, especially since they are very similar to mutants. So I think there are other reasons for that. I don't know if I necessarily buy that angle that this is officially confirmed because the Inhumans movie is off the table. I don't think that's why they canceled it. That at least would be my assessment of it. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this. What are your thoughts on Fox approaching Marvel Studios for an X-Men or a Fantastic Four movie? Alex, you are muted.
That better?
That's better.
Okay.
Much better.
I had a cough for a moment, so I muted my mic. I guess I didn't turn it off mute, though. That's all right. So regarding this, it's very unlikely, as both of you pretty much pointed out. The business is too steeped in everyone's favor to not play with each other's toys here. These two will never get along very well. I think it's safe to say something drastic would really have to happen to get them to actually finally just sell off everything. But at this point, X-Men is still a moneymaker for Fox. There's no way they're going to give up X-Men, and even with Fantastic Four not doing well in like 2 or 3 occasions, they still haven't been willing to give up the rights. They still tried to hold on to the rights to Daredevil, which flopped for them, but they lost out because they just couldn't get it in on time. And then Marvel was able to recoup it up for. So yeah, Fox is going to hold on to this. I don't see this happening, or it's going to be a sort of give or take begrudging relationship that we're going to get. But beyond that, nothing much more. All I can say is if you really want more information about how Fox and Marvel don't want to play nice, I think I recommended them like a week or 2 ago, but go watch some of the videos from Midnight's Edge. They actually have a series of videos that detail the saga of the rise and fall of the Spider-Man films and the problems with Fox and the X-Men series. They've talked about quite a bit of it. So yeah, just check out Midnight's Edge. They have quite a bit of good videos in depth about all this.
Okay. My thoughts are pretty much here. I just don't know if I necessarily buy this just yet. And again, because people have pointed to weird directions. I don't know if I necessarily buy this given the Sony angle, because the Sony movie hasn't come out yet. We don't know if it's good or bad, and I think it could potentially happen, people. I would love that it happened, but I don't think I don't think it's happening yet by any stretch. I think it'll probably be something down the road, and it'll probably just be Fantastic Four. Because Fantastic Four right now is in serious need of a good movie. X-Men is okay so far. Not a whole lot of people have disagreements with X-Men Apocalypse and Days of Future Past. I mean, we've made our jokes. I've certainly made my jokes where it's a ginormous apology. But given that, I mean, they still have plenty of other movies coming out, and for crying out loud, Deadpool has been a success. And they've officially labeled Deadpool as an X-Men movie. So you have to at least consider that concept. Final thoughts before we move to the next story?
Keep dreaming, fanboys, because you're going to be dreaming for a long time.
Quite a long time. Let's go ahead and get into the third story here. This is the one I wanted a pillow for, and so I'm going to have to keep myself from screaming so that I do not wake up my daughter. But sometime, Romney, we really do need to suspend Alex's story privileges, because he keeps on suggesting stories that hurt us horribly, and make us want to gouge our own eyes out.
I love this. Last week you were like, oh, we're not talking about your stupid Tetris movie trilogy. And that's final.
And then the listeners came in and sent us the story. I was like, crap. Now I'm in the corner. So it is officially confirmed. So we've been talking about the upcoming Tetris movie. Well, last week we got an official confirmation that we're not getting a Tetris movie, we're getting 3 Tetris movies. Gonna let that sink in here, people. We're gonna get 3 movies based off of falling blocks. I'm not saying there isn't potential in the project or in the idea, but I'm also wondering what crack are you smoking?
And this is Casanov we're dealing with as well.
Yes.
So it's, for those of you who don't know, Larry Casanov, producer of the Paul W.S. Anderson adaptation of Mortal Kombat, and I believe he was also the producer of a little-known disaster of an animated film by the name of Food Fight.
Nope, we brought this up because I had to confirm it, and that hurt my brain. So this guy is in charge of the Tetris movie, but now he's in charge of the Tetris trilogy. Or as now we're calling it, the Tetrilogy. Just seriously. Now, I know that in previous episodes...
Tetriad makes more sense!
So, at that point, I know that we've had episodes where Alex and Romney have come out and given good pitches for story there. But unfortunately, you guys are out of charge. It's Larry Casanov.
No, we're not, unfortunately.
And so at that point, I'm going to again ask the question, what are you going to do with this? It's a movie about falling blocks.
Well, they say it's going to be an epic sci-fi trilogy.
Wow, that's not vague or in the slightest. No, that is vague in the slightest.
None of these idiots play Tetris Worlds. They tried this. It did not work.
I mean, the thing that comes to my mind right off the top of my head is there are so many other game franchises that deserve a shake. Why is Tetris getting it?
Why Tetris?
Yeah.
Why Tetris?
Because people, it's really, I Hate Everything summarizes it perfectly in the whole remakes movie about I Hate Remakes, where it's like, it's so that way they can draw in the audience and says, oh, I know what a Tetris is.
Fair enough, but there's so much other games that have brand recognition, even if you're going to do something really shitty.
The problem is the smart game companies have been very protective of it for that reason. I mean, that's why Ubisoft is trying to do what Marvel does with their properties, with their upcoming Assassin's Creed and Need for Speed movies, where they basically have like major control.
Ubisoft has already come out and said, we don't think our movie is going to do very well. You're damning your movie right from the start there, Ubisoft. Congratulations.
Hold on.
So at that point, yeah, I'm up there because I mean Tetris is fun to have a reference in, say, like Futurama, because Futurama's done a Tetris reference, and it's fine, it's great, I'm happy with that. But what you're proposing to do here is create a whole narrative around falling blocks. And I'm just saying there are numerous other game properties that you could get that have tons more story, people. I mean, okay,
Yeah.
Tetris started in the arcades, so at that point, let's go for another arcade game. Okay, Space Invaders has potential, and you could do anything with that one. I mean, for crying out loud, Tron. Defender has more potential than this.
Gauntlet. I mean, Gauntlet, you can
Gauntlet?
pretty much, it's literally easy. The characters are literally already made for you. You can literally just say, okay, we just need a warrior, a wizard, a Valkyrie, and an elf. We're good.
Yeah. Gauntlet would work. Jeez, I'm like trying to dig things out of my head. Marble Madness probably has more potential than this. What was this, Alex? Yes. Yes, I've got
just
such a headache.
the idea of a Tetris movie, I've got such a headache now.
Yeah, and it's not
It's
just
quite
one,
appropriate
it's three.
foreshadowing as well.
It's 3. Why? I mean, okay, let's expand past the arcades. There are so many NES properties that could get a good movie out of this. I mean, I've never understood why, given the success, at least at one point, of Mega Man and Castlevania, that we haven't gotten some kind of film adaptation. I know that there have been some in the works. Don't send stuff to me, people. I know that there have been some in the works, but they end.
Yeah, the big problem with, at least in the case of Castlevania, is because Konami is not in a good place right now. Because Konami did what Ubisoft is trying to do, where starting with the Silent Hill movies, where Konami actually has a major stake in the film versions, and there's been movies that have been pitched. There's an upcoming TV series that they were trying to pitch and get started with Channel Frederator with Adi Shankar as a producer, but that hasn't really gone anywhere. Especially given their acquisition of 4Kids, there's a lot of issues there. And so with Konami, don't expect a movie based on a Konami property anytime soon, because they're in not a good place right now. For Capcom, maybe, but even then, a bit iffy.
I actually don't agree with you. I don't think either of them are in a good place right now to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's just Capcom's in a bit of a... It's just Capcom's in a better place than Konami, because at least they haven't completely lost their minds. And as much as we all hate to say this, the Resident Evil movies are at least financially successful, so they could say, okay, well, at least this film franchise is capable of making money, especially thanks to the foreign box office, because...
Well, but this is also Capcom, who is still sending script pitches around for Street Fighter Origins Ryu. Because Chun-Li did so well, right?
Yeah, even though we already have that, it's called Street Fighter Assassin's Fist, which they officially greenlit and allowed for a DVD to be released.
Yes, but they still want Street Fighter Origins Ryu. Because apparently Chun-Li didn't take it to the streets enough. Seriously. That's the only joke I can make here. I mean, there's a dozen other games that I could probably bring up. I don't know how many times I've seen people make a pitch for a Mass Effect movie. That would be worthwhile. Mass Effect still has enough popularity to be able to make that work. There's tons... What I'm trying to tell you guys, people, is there are tons of other movies that could be made. Why is it Tetris that's getting this money?
Mainly because it doesn't have any
Tetris, people!
Yeah, I think the real reason is because, it doesn't have an established story or canon that fans will jump down our throats for, so we can take the risk. Especially when you look at the fact that they're primarily making this for the Chinese film market. I mean, Kazanov, try as he might to convince us, like, it's not what you think. It'll be a big epic sci-fi film. Not even remotely close to figuring out what it'll be like. But then you say, casting is well underway, presumably with an eye on the boom market of China. And basically, it'll have a global feel and a partly China-set shoot. And therein lies the real motivations. They basically want to make a film that they can market to the Asian box office, because that's where a lot of the money is coming right now.
Yes, and that's the problem here, is that Because I believe we've already even confirmed that Larry Kasanoff has some big Chinese companies paying for this.
Yep.
So at that point, that's where the motivation is coming here. But as a geek, I can't accept this. I don't know what you're gonna do with it. And for me, this is gonna be Pixels 2.0. This is gonna be Pixels 2.0 and that all over again. Because there's just not enough to be able to do anything with it.
Yeah, honestly, the thing that I'm most reminded of, they say it's going to be a sci-fi thing, I'm reminded of the Robot Chicken sketch called The Last Checkers Fighter. Because that's pretty much what this film is going to end up being.
Yeah, pretty much. And at that point, let's just go ahead and bring in M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong to direct it instead of Larry Kasanoff, because we already know we're going to...
Keep in mind, Larry Kasanoff is not the director, he is the producer.
Yeah, that's right, he's the producer.
And so, he's not directing it, and apparently they're already casting, which means they already have a script somehow.
Yeah, they do. Final thoughts before we move on to this, because this is rage-inducing is what it is.
I mean, aside from all of us letting out a collective scream of why to the uncaring heavens above, not much.
Yeah. Forget Tetris. Let's get NES Paperboy. I mean, come on. It's the story of the kid who's delivering papers.
You know what? I'm actually going to open this up to the panel. This will be a fun exercise. One game that you would like to be able to see get a movie adaptation that maybe wouldn't have gotten that consideration. And no, I'm not going to count Paperboy. You can have another one if you want, Alex. Go, Alex. So one game you would like to see a movie adaptation happen.
I wouldn't mind. Okay. I would like to. You know what? I would really like to see an actual anime made out of the Shantae series, because besides the anime art, there's a lot of material there to work with, I feel like.
So you would want an animated movie?
Movie or even an actual series.
Okay. Romney, what game would you like to be adapted into a movie?
Well,
that would be better. That would obviously be better than this.
Well, aside from Gauntlet, if you want to go, okay, let's take an arcade game and adapt it, well, there's a nice little Namco arcade game that would lend itself well to be a nice family-friendly animated film, and that's the one called Mappy. You're literally playing a mouse police officer that is trying to stop cat burglars. I could see that as an animated comedy for kids. Like, oh, a rookie... I mean, they could just rip off Zootopia. It's like, oh, it's a rookie mouse police officer who has to basically crack the case and stop a cat burglar from stealing a bunch of people's stuff. Or a bunch of people's stuff gets... It's up to this rookie constable who happens to be a mouse to track down this fearsome cat burglar. And I'm thinking, okay, there's mileage you can get out of that, and it's a simple arcade game, but hey, at least the groundwork is somewhat there. A mouse cop chasing cat burglars.
And yet, strangely enough, that sounds like a better idea than The Secret Life of Pets. I'm trying to link things back to Romney's channel because he did a review of it. I don't think it was good.
Yeah, it's just it gave me flashbacks, but sadly, that was a case where my brain started coming up with a better movie in my own head, just so that I could survive the film.
So basically, you did. So didn't you do this with Gem too, where you were literally writing a story in the middle of your review?
No, not really with Gem. I did do that with Catching Fire, though.
Yeah, Catching Fire. That's
gonna get a lot of people angry at me, because I mean, at least Gem had moments where it held my interest, only to have the film we saw in the trailers rear its ugly head because one of the producers is Scooter Braun. Let's not delve back into the flashbacks because, well, in some regards, I'm still there, still in the theater.
Yeah, pretty much. Mine is... I'm actually trying to pick out of franchises that I'm pretty sure would never happen at this point. So, like, a Mega Man movie is out because Capcom just isn't interested. I want a Castlevania game. It's not happening because Konami's not interested. If I were to pick a series, and I'd probably just pick, a one-off game that had some success, maybe had a cult classic kind of following. I haven't played this game, but I've heard numerous things about it. How about an animated movie of Okami?
Well, I'm sure the idea's been pitched around. Problem is, it would be a hard sell to a U.S. audience because
it would be.
Yeah, it is very. I mean, if they were keeping it on a smaller budget and
that's Capcom, isn't it?
Yeah, that is Capcom.
Okay,
so and it's a very Japan-centric idea. So it would be a really hard sell as a multi-million-dollar film to release in theaters worldwide. So,
crap, I can't even think of a property without going into like the mainstream properties that I love, because I don't want another Final Fantasy movie. We've already had that problem happen.
well, sort of. I mean, Advent Children was at least tolerable.
Yeah, but what I'm more worried is that they would do another Spirits Within, because
They
would
wouldn't.
want to get that.
See, the big problem with that was when Sakaguchi was in control and wanted to do a unique idea. If we was Square up,
Gucci in control.
the thing is, we're actually already getting a Final Fantasy feature-length movie. Actually, Kingsglaive.
Yeah.
It's the big tie-in for Final Fantasy 15. So actually, we already are getting a Final Fantasy movie. So partially, your fears are already being addressed, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I just can't think of one right off the top of my head. Maybe I'll put a comment below when I actually come up with a franchise, because there's numerous ones that I think would be worthy of it, but I just don't know how valid it is to be able to get it going. But tons of them, like for example, Master Blaster came to mind because that's a Hudson Soft property, but at least that has more story than Tetris does. So
yeah, I mean, if you
it's
want
got potential, and that potential is. And that potential is, dude's frog escapes from his bowl, leaps off into the distance, goes into a hole, and owner finds a tank and anime body armor, and decides to go hunting for the frog in the tank. More story than Tetris.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, look at all the space shooters like Gradius or Galaga or even Asteroids. You can make a movie out of that.
Guardian Legend. That actually, you know what? That's my one. That Guardian Legend is for those who don't know it, it's an NES gem that I used to play tons as a kid, and I think I've made a pitch to Alex to do this on Draken Shadow, is the Guardian Legend, because it's literally it's a game that tries to mix in like 4 or 5 genres together, including the fact that, Alex, here's all I have to do to pitch this to you. You're playing a female protagonist that has the ability to transform into a Gradius-type fighter.
Is it like those side-scrolling shooters?
No, it's Zelda-like in its viewpoint. It's crap. The word is escaping me right now. From the top-down view. Thank you. Top-down view, but it incorporates shooter elements. It incorporates shmup elements. It incorporates RPG elements into it. But it actually had a pretty good story along with it, a good sci-fi story.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
The Guardian Legend. I don't know if you would call it the Guardian Legend, but...
Yeah, I would say this, though. If that were to be greenlit, there is one unfortunate company that you may have to tango with if you're not careful, because, I mean, I don't know if it's like hard sci-fi, hard fantasy, or whatever, but I'm hearing your pitch and I'm thinking, yeah, how long would it take before Harmony Gold tries to jump on it and assert some sort of claim to it? Because I wouldn't put it past them. They've done tricky, skeezy stuff like that in the past, so...
I don't know, honestly. And that's something I didn't consider, but, I mean, that's the one I can think of. The Guardian Legend actually would be worthwhile. Okay, well, final thoughts before we move on into the next story, or / discussion, because there's tons of stuff that has happened in regards to this. Nothing? Okay. So...
Yeah, it's Tetris. What can we say?
I really want to put in like the Brental Floss Tetris with lyrics for this entire segment. Nobody even hears our opinions on the matter. It's just me playing Brental Floss's Tetris with lyrics.
I could just do the whole Big Bang joke again.
Yeah.
The entire movie is watching blocks fall for 2.5 hours. It costs $80 million to make. How do you sleep at night? On top of a large pile of money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So this next story is discussion in length because, well, this is basically 2 stories kind of melded together, but it's along kind of the same issues. And so we're going to tackle both versions of it, one of which was in regards to the upcoming Star Trek Beyond. And here's the thing, too. listeners actually send in a lot of the research for this, and so again, thank you guys, because a lot of these quotes and things like that were very difficult for me to track down. So I'm at least glad that they gave me kind of a basis with the stories that they gave me to try and get the actual quotes that happened. So in regards to Star Trek Beyond, it was recently announced that the new Hikaru Sulu, played by John Cho, it's official in the script that he is an openly gay character. I don't know if this is officially in reference to the fact that the original Hikaru Sulu, played by George Takei, is gay, but they don't really specify, and I'm not really going to go deep into that. So that announcement happened. And I saw the internet obviously do its usual rah, 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 rah. And you can't really avoid that. My reaction was obviously, okay, I'm fine with it. John Cho still plays a badass as far as I'm concerned in these movies. Because that's like the most... And I've seen some Star Trek episodes, people, so don't get on my case, but he looks more badass than George Takei did, and even George Takei has kind of admitted this. With that being said, though, there's been backlash to the official announcement. And the first one was from George Takei. So, George Takei came out, and I believe it was in an interview, where he actually came out and said he was okay with an openly gay character in the movie, he just didn't think that Sulu should be it. And so he brings up he didn't bring up this concern, the internet did, that the reason that they did it was because George Takei. And he doesn't bring that up. His main concern with it is that he wanted to see them make a new character, especially since it's the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and that's how Gene Roddenberry would have done it. And he's not wrong in the matter, but, well, I would actually make the argument that Gene Roddenberry hadn't been involved for quite a while. I think the last one he was actually remotely involved in, or no, not remotely, he was directly involved in, was Next Generation. I don't think he did a whole lot with Deep Space Nine or even Voyager.
No,
I know he wasn't around for Enterprise. I don't even think he was around for Voyager. So at that point, that happened, and I'm not saying that George is wrong. I think that's exactly what Gene would have done. I don't know if that's plausible, considering that the script is written and the thing is filmed, but there you go.
There's some background information which Simon Pegg and Justin Lin had been communicating with Takei as they were working on the script, and were kind of wanting to get his opinions on the idea of bringing in a gay character because the fact that he's a gay rights activist, and he was a part of this Star Trek franchise, and so naturally they'd want to get someone's thoughts on it as someone who actually met Gene Roddenberry, who actually knew Gene Roddenberry when he was alive. And so I can see, and so there was like a bit of a back and
George
forth.
Respected him too. Like, he knew him, he respected him. So if you're gonna get that kind of input, there's no better guy to be able to do it.
Yeah, and basically from what I read in the article, in some of the other articles, because for the sake of the agenda, people were going off an IGN article, but then some of the other articles, they explained how in the months in which they were working on the script, there was a back and forth between Simon Pegg and Justin Lin and George Takei, and kind of trying to hammer down some sort of an idea where they approached him saying, hey, we're thinking of doing a gay character in Star Trek. Do you think that would be something Star Trek would tackle? And Takei's just like, oh, yeah. But then it led to a back and forth saying, oh, well, we want to kind of turn a character like Sulu gay, whereas Takei's like, no, I really think you should do an original character because we don't want... And I can see both sides of the argument. On one hand, I can understand wanting to do a unique character so that way you can tackle those issues uniquely, especially in something like Star Trek, which is about dealing with a lot of issues when you consider things like the Prime Directive and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's also an argument to be made for why they chose an established character to be gay rather than creating a new character. And I've seen like well-thought arguments for both sides. Like the argument I saw in defense of choosing Sulu is that unlike a new character, Sulu is an established part of the canon, meaning that down the line they can't just sweep Sulu away for reasons like they would with a original character that just may not have done well with audiences. And so it's very much I can see both sides, and at least both sides are being very civil about it. You're not seeing straight-up flame wars between George Takei and Simon Pegg. They're basically both saying, well, like, Simon Pegg, I like how he responded. He's just like, I respectfully disagree with his statements, and I stand by the script that I wrote.
Before we go into that, let me actually read the George Takei quotes, because I think that the context here actually needs to be taken into account. So I was actually able to track it down. Here's the quote. I'm delighted that there's a gay character, and this was to the Hollywood Reporter, by the way. Unfortunately, it's a twist. I'm delighted that there's a gay character. Unfortunately, it's a twisting of Gene's creation to which he put in so much thought. I think it's really unfortunate. And then he goes on later to say, I said this movie is going to be coming out on the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. The 50th anniversary of paying tribute to Gene Roddenberry, the man whose vision it was to carry us through half a century. Honor him and create a new character. I urged them, meaning Simon Pegg and Justin Lin, and they left me with the feeling that that was going to happen. Okay? So this is their interpretation, and I agree with Romney. There's no ill will in this. I know that a lot of people have been digging up that there is ill will, that George Takei is pissed at this. He's not. He's made his case. And on top of that, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is where it got even more complicated, because now Simon Pegg has stepped out and actually made some statements on that as well, and he's actually made some decent arguments too. To which I am actually going to read his quote really quick. We could have introduced a new gay character, but he or she would have been primarily defined by their sexuality. And this is a statement released to The Guardian, by the way. And it would have been seen as the gay character rather than simply for who they are, and isn't that tokenism? And that's actually my concern on the matter, is that if they did this, that's how it would come across. I actually think that, and I may get filleted for doing this, I think it was a good move to make Sulu the gay character. And the reason I think that is because he was already getting a little bit of a push in the previous two movies. And so at that point, he's already coming off as a strong character, and he has character development, and this adds a whole new shade to that character for me. So at that point, I love you, George. I do. But I actually kind of agree with their statement or with their frame of mind on the matter. I see yours too, but I actually agree with it. I think that's exactly what would have happened, is that this new character would have been the gay character, and we would have had an issue with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I already know of a ton of Star Trek fans that have enough of a problem with the story that Beyond is trying to tell. So at that point, I don't know if they want to get themselves into even more of a quagmire with it.
Yeah, especially considering, and there have been some arguments I've seen people making over why Sulu may not have been the greatest choice. Although there's one argument I want to address that I think people overthink of the whole, oh, Sulu has a daughter though, he can't possibly be gay. I mean, one, aside from the fact that there's a lot of gay, well, not even just alternate reality, even the case of there's gay people that have children, and if you want to even put aside the fact that by that point people wouldn't necessarily be hiding, I mean, who knows? Maybe there would be the technology there where, for example, a gay couple could have a surrogate made from the DNA of the two homosexual parents. And so it could even be possible that, okay, well, maybe the daughter, like, if they decide to still have Sulu have a daughter, it could just be, okay, well, she was basically she was made by a surrogate. There. Yeah. That continuity issue is resolved.
I mean, there's even enough vagueness in the original Star Trek, because I don't even think Sulu's wife ever got mentioned. So at that point, there's enough vagueness that you could do that. The reason I kind of burst out the way I did was because the first justification I can make on that matter is alternate reality, because all of these are based in an alternate reality, and therefore it's already fixed in that regard. Is that the Sulu could have been married to a woman, and that could have been the case. It's just in this reality he's gay.
Yeah, you know? Especially when you consider. Especially when you consider it's the classic butterfly effect, where because of the key change at the start of the whole franchise, a lot of things could have rippled down, even down to a genetic level, and that would just evolve into a different debate, but the whole idea Sulu has a daughter is not an argument against it. Because especially when you think of the Federation and the kind of technology they might have, that could even be a case of, oh, well, yeah, there's gay people in the Federation, but we still have the technology that if they want to, they could still have children that are biologically related to them, so on and so forth. So that's kind of thrown out. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting. I mean, some people make some good arguments over why they should have gone with Kirk being gay. I understand why Paramount wouldn't want to do that. but at least some people made some arguments, given that Kirk's a bit of a horn dog and throughout the galaxy. Everyone's made the jokes, but
Yeah.
to bring it back to the main point, it's definitely not an issue that could be solved overnight, and I'd rather that they at least stick to their guns rather than half-ass. And so if they want to go with Sulu, at least it's kind of a case of, hey, we're going to stand by this. We're not going to backpedal.
And here's the thing, too. Given the stories that I've actually read on this matter, and yeah, it seems to me like George and them were in pretty lengthy discussions for what seems like months. And so at that point, I think they made their case very clear to George. And I'm not saying that George is in the wrong. George can have a disagreement, and I understand his disagreement. But I think they made their case to him. It's not like he got, this swept under the rug and was never told. This was something that I think they pitched to him, and he didn't agree with it at the time. I personally agree with it because, again, I think John Cho has gotten enough of a push in the movies that you could do something with that. I mean, he got a whole badass scene in Star Trek I where he saved Kirk by pulling out literally a fold-out katana to save Kirk. And then we got to have some badass moments in the captain's chair and Into Darkness. So Sulu has been pretty much established as being a good character to be able to do this. So I'm not against it, but I can see their point of view. And hopefully we've brought this up so that you guys can see that kind of point of view, because I've seen a lot of hatred getting spouted at Peg, at Lynn, at Takei, at all of that. And frankly, I'm kind of done with it. At this point, I just want Beyond to come out so that we can have our assessment of it. Because I'm more worried about the movie itself than character decisions. I already don't like the fact that this is basically Star Trek Mad Max. And if I upset people by saying that, I'm sorry, but that's what the trailer looks like. It's Star Trek meets Mad Max. And I don't know necessarily if I want that, especially since I like the first two. And I know very little about the Kirk Spock era. So I love the fact that these movies exist and allow me to see a way into their characters. Granted, it's a different character, but I'm glad that I get something kind of to start with, to be able to at least get that kind of understanding with these characters. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this. Do you have anything else to add before we move on to the other part of this?
I mean, I'm not a Star Trek fan, so I don't have a lot of strong opinions, but it's good that Takei made his thoughts known, and it's good that the writers have made their thoughts known. At the end of the day, I hate to do this. I have to take the middleman option and just say, I guess everybody's got a point, and it's a wait-and-see option because, well, Romney's right. If you gave it to an original character, it would be easy enough to sweep them away if the character doesn't really catch on with audiences, right? But Takei's got the point that, well, Sulu was never really established like this. This is something that Roddenberry never really established. You're probably better going with someone new instead of trying to pigeonhole an existing character. So that's all I can say, really. It's just everyone's got a point, and we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah. All right, so let's bring out the second portion of this because it's a similar argument, but on a different scale.
Mm-hmm.
So this didn't officially happen this week, but a listener brought it to our attention this week, which was in regards to the announcement that Bryan Cranston would be playing Zordon in the upcoming Power Rangers movie, which, if you guys don't know our opinions on it, we've covered it. We're all pretty much overwhelmingly positive on the matter.
Mm-hmm.
And for different reasons, I mean, I think amongst all of us, we only have one person who has seen Breaking Bad. So that's not necessarily the reason for a lot of us. For me and Romney, I think it's because Bryan Cranston has such a connection to Power Rangers anyway, that it works. However, it's interesting that we brought up Billy Cranston because the story now centers around the actor of Billy Cranston, David Yost. And this is in particular to a tweet that was sent to him via Amy Jo Johnson, where she sent the link that Bryan Cranston had been announced as Zordon. And I actually need to bring up the actual tweet here.
I just gotta say, like, looking at that tweet, it very much felt like have that awkward moment where a friend goes to another friend to kind of announce something they found that they think is cool, only to inadvertently trigger some sort of like bad blood or something, and you're thinking, oh, isn't this cool? And then you see David Yost responding, no, and you're just like, ah.
Yeah, so the actual quote from Amy Jo Johnson was, "Yo, at David Yost, how cool is it that Bryan Cranston is playing Zordon in the Power Rangers movie? Wasn't your character named after him?" To which we got a fairly quick response from David Yost, basically saying, "Not cool. I'm not a fan of homophobes. Fae/gay equals a problem." And basically what he actually is referring to is that there is an IGN article where he was interviewed, Bryan Cranston, not David Yost, where he actually did use, and I quote, "He's the Fae one, that's the problem." Okay, so this quote did happen, and I think Bryan Cranston has come out and owned it, that it is there. I'm not sure on this one. Here's my research into this, people. I actually had to dig through both of these guys' Twitters over the last 2 weeks just to see what if they'd had interactions with each other via Twitter. That's what I did, because I also wanted to see like if this argument got perpetuated by fans or anything like that. And believe it or not, this actually did get brought up again because Amy Jo Johnson sent another tweet to David Yost, sending a story about Bryan Cranston and regarding same-sex marriage, and that it should be. It was a positive one. It was actually saying that this needs to happen, and David Yost basically coming out and saying, no, still not cool with him. And so at that point, that sparked a huge debate on, is David Yost being a dick here? Is Bryan Cranston a dick? Should Bryan Cranston be playing Zordon? Blah, 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 blah. It's sparked a whole debate that thankfully has kind of fizzled out, and I'm actually glad that there has been no, at least Twitter-wise, interactions between Bryan Cranston and David Yost. I checked everywhere, people. They haven't really had a direct interaction. Okay? At least that I could find in their tweets. And with that, I'm going to go last because I have plenty of things to say on this whole issue. Romney, do you want to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, and this is another one of those things where it is very sticky. So far, to my knowledge, Bryan Cranston hasn't issued any official response to David Yost's statements or to the whole discussion. And honestly, it's very much a case of, well, although I'm excited to see Bryan Cranston play Zordon, well, David Yost is entitled to his opinion, and I can understand his reason for making these statements, because that is a very, very not cool statement to have attached to someone who is then being attached to a film based on a franchise that... And keep in mind, Power Rangers carries a lot of painful memories for David Yost as a person, and that was even leading to a lot of the reasons why he left the show, because his sexual orientation was a source of conflict between himself and a lot of the cast and crew on the series. That's why you had him waffling on whether or not to be the Gold Ranger in Zeo, was because it was getting to the point where he didn't want to be on the show for much longer. And so I can see where he's coming from and why having someone who's made a statement like, oh, he's the Fae one and that's the problem in regards to Bryan, because to give context, I hunted down the original IGN article, and the IGN interview said, oh, yeah, it's kind of cool that, like, is it true that Billy Cranston's named after you? And Bryan Cranston's like, oh, yeah, that is true. And it's like, yeah, that is true. And then the IGN person said, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then Bryan Cranston retorted saying, well, he's the Fae one. That's the problem. And so I can understand why David Yost would take a lot of issue with that, given a lot of the painful memories as a result of the franchise. That although he's gone on record saying that he loves the character, and if the script was written well, he would come back to play Billy Cranston, I can see where he's coming from. It is very much a personal issue for David Yost.
Yeah.
And so I can see why you would have serious misgivings about someone like Bryan Cranston being given the role of Zordon.
Yep. So, Alex, do you have anything you want to interject before I line myself up for another shot?
Oh, I didn't look too much deeper into this. It is a pretty sticky situation, and it's kind of a he said moment here that, I don't want to get too bogged down into it. I don't know what Cranston really meant when he said that he's the Fae one that's the problem, but Romney's got the point. Obviously, David Yost could have construed that as as a pretty mean insult, and so I can understand why he'd be upset about it too. I hope at some point they can at least put the differences aside. I'm not saying they'll make up and become good friends, but that David Yost will be able to move on from
I would
of the
actually dare
unfortunate
say
events.
I don't think it's going to happen, and it's just because, well, there's at least one aggressor in this, and that is David Yost.
Mm.
And the reason I say that, people, isn't necessarily to say I'm taking a side. It's because the only person that's taken any action to this has been David Yost. Granted, a lot of this has been through Amy Jo Johnson, but he has made a response, and Bryan Cranston hasn't. And that's kind of the issue there. So at that point, as far as an argument is concerned, I have to look at David Yost as the aggressor here, because he's the one that's pushing it. I'm not saying he's pushing it hard, but that's the way it is. You have one person saying something and another person not. With that being said, so I followed this, and I was kind of surprised when I first saw it, because I think I've said this on the podcast, but I'm not sure if it was during the evening of Geekery Days or if it was actually when it was Geek News. And that is that one of my favorite Power Rangers actually is Billy Cranston. And the reason I love Billy Cranston is because, well, I grew up as a geek. I grew up being bullied. And so in a lot of cases where a lot of people, or a lot of boys, flock to Jason, because he's the strong one, I flocked to Billy because Billy was going through what I was going through at that point. And then later on, I heard about his treatment on set, which even further kind of pushed me into that direction, because it wasn't that he wasn't necessarily taking abuse on the camera. They did the Bulk and Skull stuff, but it wasn't like he was being bullied on an every episode basis. But he was this typical geek, which means you can assume that he was. And the same thing was happening off of camera as well. And so at that point, I had a tremendous amount of respect for the fact that he endured it for as long as he did before he eventually walked off the set. Because, I mean, we're talking Mighty Morphin lasted 3 seasons, and he basically lasted half of a full season with Zeo before he left. I think it was about the halfway point, maybe even the 3/4 point when he left.
Yeah, more or less, it was pretty much he more or less left, and they kind of wrote him out pretty close to the end of Zeo.
Yeah.
Really, really close to the end of Zeo, where they have the whole arc of him being an old man because of the effects of the machine that he used to basically get him back to his basically, they were far enough along, but it was very much, yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, I saw this quote, and I immediately wanted to do my homework. I'm like, Bryan Cranston has to have responded at this point, because that's a shot fired over the bow, and I'm actually kind of surprised I didn't see official things from Saban coming out against David Yost, because he's still planning on making con appearances. He's still set up for Power Morphicon and all that stuff, which I wouldn't have been surprised if Saban said, well, he did this and we're not happy about it, so no, you don't get to show up, because they could do that. I'm not saying that they could do it with the cons, but they could essentially come out and fillet David Yost for doing that.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Power Morphicon, Saban doesn't actually control. No. That's a fan effort that has more or less emerged on its own.
But fans could actually come out against David for that statement. Because, again, he's looking like the dick, not necessarily Bryan Cranston. And the reason I say that is because as much as what Bryan said is wrong, and I agree on that, the statement was made 7 years ago. And so at that point, I'm not saying that he's changed entirely, but it's hard to not believe that during 7 years' time that both David Yost and Bryan Cranston have become different people in the process. They've had to learn lessons, they've had to evolve, they've had to do all of that stuff. And so, to me at least, the statement from David comes off as a little petty. And the reason it does is because, well, he's the one that looks like he's holding a grudge. And he is, to an extent. And whether it's justified or not, we could go into that debate forever. but at that point, I can't help but at least acknowledge the fact that Brian may have had some kind of change in this time that David is not acknowledging. And I don't know if David ever will acknowledge. But the fact that he's holding true to this concept just seems to me like David Yost is the bitter one. And I don't want to believe that, because I'm a David Yost fan. I still love Billy Cranston. But this is one of those times where I would actually dare say that David Yost actually needs to take a lesson from his character, because I would like to think that Billy would have forgiven instead of gone down the hatred route. And the reason and this is actually like culminating for everything this week, is there is so much hatred being flown around in various other avenues of not just this story, in Star Trek, in all of these other stories, that I've actually gotten to a point where I'm just sick and tired of the hatred. I'm just sick and tired of it. Can we just... I'm not saying that you outright have to forgive people, but can we at least just leave this alone for the moment? Because hatred doesn't solve anything. If anything, it makes us more bitter. And it makes us go and do extreme actions like some of the stuff that has happened in this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I'm just against... I guess what I'm saying is I'm just against the hatred being flown around. Especially from a guy that I think personally is better than this.
Yeah. To be fair, whether or not there has been a change in Bryan Cranston still has yet to be seen until...
Yeah.
And for all we know, maybe Bryan might just not issue an official response, which is a valid tactic. I mean, especially if you look at stories like The Crucible, of how the one guy managed to get out of losing everything for his family by literally not saying anything. And so, and on the one hand, I can understand that maybe there's been a change that David's not acknowledging, but at the same time, we don't know, because Bryan hasn't said anything into that regard one way or another.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, the bottom line is that we don't know any of that, and I'm basing a lot of this off of the fact that it's 7 years old, and that I would like to think that we've kind of moved past this whole thing, but I can't guarantee that. And frankly, I actually don't think Bryan is going to make a response to David. Part of me actually did consider the chance that maybe one of the people that was persecuting David Yost on set was Bryan Cranston.
Not likely.
I don't know if that's the case.
It's not likely, given that Bryan Cranston, in regards to his role in Power Rangers, he was brought into ADR for the monsters, and there would the chances of the two of them being at the recording studio on the same day is pretty unlikely.
Sure, but I mean, at this point, you kind of brought up an interesting point here, Romney. We don't know their relationship at that point, or if they even had one.
Probably not
they
at
actually
all.
met each other.
Well,
I don't think they all have one at all. I think.
And I'm actually going off of what I saw in the behind the scenes on the Power Rangers DVDs I have in the giant head that is off screen, where they explain that most of the monsters and even villains like Zed and Rita, they were basically recorded in one-on-one solo sessions. There was rarely any time where Robert Axelrod, Barbara Goodson even recorded in the same session and were even able to play off each other. A lot of the lines for the monsters and the villains were all recorded in one-on-one sessions, and even the dubbing sessions for the action scenes for the Rangers were often recorded in just one-on-one sessions. So it's pretty unlikely that they even really interacted. It was just more or less the name Billy Cranston was more or less put in by the producers, because the producers who did get to interact with all these different people all at once had those memories there from when Bryan would come in to do some of the dubbing work.
Yeah. So at that point, I know that a lot of my stuff is grasping at straws. I'm not saying that I don't, but I'm just at that point this week where I just want the hatred to end, especially from people that I looked up to. And frankly, I love you, David, and I think you're better than this. I think you're better than hatred that lasted 7 years. That's to me what this kind of looks like from your Twitter. It just looks like petty hatred. And granted, you have a reason to be able to have that, and I completely respect that. But things aren't going to change people unless we actually do take this step and are willing to forgive instead of just sit there and fester with hatred. So if that's the moral of the story of this podcast, I guess. I don't know. It's just one of those things that has kind of bothered me throughout this week, and these stories have kind of magnified it. So, final thoughts before we kind of wrap things up. I mean, I already know I'm gonna get comments on this one. And guys, you're more than welcome to do so. Feel free to leave a discussion here. Do you think Brian's in the wrong? Do you think David's in the right? Leave us discussions on George Takei and Simon Pegg. I would love to be able to hear what you guys have to say on it. But yeah, final thoughts before we kind of wrap things up.
Well, in regards to like Sulu, I kind of made clear there's arguments for both sides of whether or not to make Sulu the gay character. There's arguments for it. There's arguments against it. People have thought out, well, like have made really eloquent arguments either way. And I personally am of the opinion that if the people behind Star Trek Beyond are going to do it, I'd rather have it be where they stick to their guns and just straight up own it, which is why I like how Simon Pegg responded where he says he just respectfully disagrees, because at least it means, okay, they're at least standing by their decision and are going to own it. In regards to David Yost's responses to the Bryan Cranston casting, I can understand where he's coming from. I may not necessarily like how it kind of came out of nowhere, and I kind of feel sorry for Amy Jo Johnson being the one who accidentally started it, because that's definitely got to be an awkward conversation. It's like, oh, this is a cool thing, and then accidentally opening this, and that's got to be an awkward thing.
Especially since I think those two are actually really good friends, and so at that point, like looking at it from a friend's perspective, she's got to think like she's upset him by bringing it up.
Well, yeah, keep in mind, both Amy Jo Johnson and David Yost have. I mean, Amy Jo Johnson even got on record that the fame from Power Rangers more or less gave her nightmares in the early days. So
yeah,
they don't necessarily. I mean, although they do appreciate kind of the fan bases and look back with some fondness, there's definitely a case to be made that they don't necessarily have the same fondness attached to it that other actors like, say, Jason David Frank have attached to it. And so in the case with this particular regard, I mean, on the one hand, I can understand people wanting a response from Bryan Cranston, but at the same time, well, it's not really in his interest, nor does he really have to be made to respond because, well, it's not his job to respond to every single public comment. I mean, it's going to come up in interviews during press junkets. That's unavoidable, of course.
Mm-hmm. But that's probably, if we're going to get a response, it's going to be then, when that happens.
And at the same time, I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, I understand, like, although I understand it may come out of nowhere, I can at least understand where it's coming from. So all I can really say in parts of the audience is to have a little bit of empathy and kind of understand that it's not just coming out of nowhere. I can kind of see why, like, kind of the emotions behind it and why David would have come out making that statement because, well, it's obviously attached to some painful parts of his past, and I completely understand it. I mean, doesn't necessarily, I mean, it's a tricky thing where, yeah, it does make him look like a bit of a jerk, but at the same time, I understand where he's coming from. So all I can say is that before people start flooding David Yost's Twitter with hate comments, and even people who are in support of David Yost, all I can say is that I wish to make an appeal to the audience to have a little bit of empathy and understand, yeah, this is where he's coming from, and so I can understand why he would make that statement.
Yeah. Alex, final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I don't have anything more to add. It's an ugly situation. Let's not have it blow up into a shitstorm and let it go away quietly. They'll live their lives each to their own that they need to do, and just move on with their lives and be okay with what they do. So let's just hope that this doesn't get beyond this, really.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap things up because we are over time. If people want to get a hold of you, Romney, to debate any of the topics that we have discussed this evening, how do they do that, as well as see your own content?
Well, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe. And I am also on Twitter at RomneyReviews. And unfortunately, I don't really have a recommendation for either Romney's Reading Club, Romney's Viewing Club, or Romney's Gaming Club, since the main game that's been my obsession has been Dissidia. So unfortunately, no recommendation this week because I haven't really been doing anything different from last week. So.
Alex, if people want to get a hold of you on the various topics that we've discussed tonight and ask for your opinion directly, or just take a look at all of the wonderful content that your channel provides, how do they do that?
Well, of course, you can see me here on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel where I provide anime content most of the time and some gaming content on the side. And of course, I am on Twitter at AlexJShort is my handle, and I'll get a little one cool thing or viewing recommendation for the week. As Romney actually, fittingly enough, mentioned Drivergate earlier on the show, well, Guru Larry, Larry Bundy Jr., Guru Larry, on his YouTube channel actually made a little, about 18-minute video all about the whole Drivergate fiasco that unfolded. It's a pretty interesting story, so go check out Guru Larry and see more into that story.
Okay. And yeah, so there, we've got plenty of content that you guys can actually check out, including the Gaming with the Geeks that we have going on right now with the Shadow Blazer himself on Rise of the Tomb Raider. So you guys can check that out on my channel as well. And for those who don't actually know this, the Shadow Blazer and myself actually do a collaboration channel where we do Let's Plays together, and that is Draken Shadow. We have plenty of Let's Plays for you guys to check into, both mainstream games as well as some games that you may not have heard of. For example, Alex was actually pretty persistent that we do the .hack PS2 series, and we're actually getting ready to wrap that up. So we already have the first 3 games completed, and we're working on the 4th game right now. So you guys can go ahead and check that out. And if you guys want to get a hold of me for the various opinions that I've had, and I have a feeling I'm going to get quite a few, there are 2 ways to be able to do it. One is to access my channel at youtube.com/Drac2326. That is where Geek News is hosted, as well as Gaming with the Geeks and all of the other things that we do together, including the group reviews, all of that. You can get that access there. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Drac2326, and I will try and get to your tweets as quick and as able as I can, but as Alex can attest, I'm not the best at the Twitter, so I'm not the best at the tweeter, and sometimes it takes a while for me to get to that. So just keep that in mind. If you guys want to get a hold of the show directly, there are 4 ways to be able to do it, and the first 2 are social media. You can look up Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions on Facebook and like it, and you'll get up-to-the-minute information when we go live and the stories we'll be talking about, including all of the other things that we have going on, including Genshiken Plays Dungeons & Dragons, which we just barely did for the Team 4-Star Abridge-a-thon, but we still would like you guys' input on whether or not to do another episode, because we'd love to be able to do it, but we want to make sure that there's backing behind it before we do so. Because obviously, you're looking at 2 of the staff for it, and I'm not, as much as Romney put me on as the executive producer, I'm not the guy who wrote it, and I'm not the guy who produced it. So you have at least 2 of those people here, and they would like to be able to hear your feedback on it. So that's one way to be able to do it. You can also follow us on Twitter at GeekyNRO, and you'll get pretty much the same information there, as well as the various links to videos that these guys might be having up on their channels at that given moment. The other 2 is you can email us directly at geekyweek@gmail.com, and you can leave us the stories that we get. You know, like I said, we got a lot of listener suggestions this week. You guys can leave us the stories. Just make sure that you leave a story that we can actually branch off into. I know that occasionally we read the fast food stories, but that's just because there's humor to it. So you guys can leave that there. And also, we are getting ready to do Q&As for the Gaming with the Geeks for all of the panelists, including myself, and Brinton's is actually getting ready to be recorded. So if you want to leave a question, feel free to leave it over at geekyweek@gmail.com. You can also go to geekyweek.podomatic.com and get our RSS feed. So you'll get up-to-the-minute information, or up-to-the-minute episodes of when we upload them, and you'll also get our iTunes feed as well there. And I know that archive is a little out of date. I've had some issues both on my end as well as with Podomatic, but we are going to be getting episodes up fairly soon, so you guys can enjoy those there as well. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. We hope you guys have continue to enjoy our podcast, and we continue to love you guys' contributions and the love that you guys show for us, even when we occasionally piss you off. Because that's one of those things I love getting listeners like, I love you and all, but you pissed me off with the story opinion, and that happens. And I completely understand that, but we continue to appreciate you guys' support. But in the meantime, for me, for Alex, and for Romney, that's going to do it for us this evening, so we will be back next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions.